Welcome to Negotiation with Alice, your negotiation podcast. Everything that you do where you need to get on the same page with someone else is a negotiation. So whether you have to negotiate a contract with someone, or you simply need your boss to sign off on that program that you'd like to implement, or you want to figure out how to rebalance the chore structure in your home, or talk about what vacation you want to go on. All of these things are negotiations. So in my podcast, we go over both personal and professional conversations, which all are considered negotiation, and I will give you tips on how to come out ahead. Welcome to the show. Welcome, listeners, to another episode of Negotiation with Alice. Today, I've got Jaimi Cortes with us. Hi, Jaimi.
Hi, good morning.
And I would love for Jaimi to introduce yourself. If you can tell everyone what it is that you do, where you're located, and who you'd like to work with.
Great. So thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and be in conversation with you. I am the founder of COR Philanthropic Strategies. So I am a philanthropic advisor an independent philanthropic advisor. So I work with individuals and families to support their charitable giving strategies. So that means really thinking about values, purpose alignment, moving beyond maybe reactive giving to more strategic giving, and supporting families within that and creating legacy plans and helping people move money to things that they're most interested in and to make it meaningful and joyful.
Could you just for me and for my listeners, explain the difference between reactive giving and charitable giving, or strategic? I think you said strategic giving.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people, I think we all give. We probably don't realize, maybe you have a monthly that goes to your humane society, right? Or to your church or your kids' school or your alma mater. So that I think is a little more of you're giving because you have a sense of purpose with that. You have, a history. But strategic is really, there's something that most of us want to see change in the world, something that we really have a passion about and we really want to help others. May it be education, like I really want to help students go to college, or help kids with make kindergarten readiness parameters, guidelines, help people with food. Right now we're in a big place where SNAP benefits, even though they're back, they're not fully back. And so reactive is doing things we may have already been doing for a while, but not really strategic. And where can we think that we can make a bigger impact, social impact with that money?
Great. Thank you for clarifying that. And in terms of the giving conversation and tying that back to negotiations, I'd love to really have you pose the question that you and I talked about earlier, from your standpoint of giving, philanthropy, working with families, and coming from my standpoint, which is about negotiation. I know you have some questions, Jaimi, so take it away.
Yeah. So, I could talk about philanthropy all day. So stop me when I'm saying too much, because I love the subject. I love thinking about how we can give more to community and how we can make this meaningful, like I said. So because you're the expert in negotiation and mediation, I really wanted to talk about intergenerational family wealth and issues that come up with that. So of course, my lane is more philanthropy. And so I think about many older generations who maybe are not necessarily as socially justice minded as, generation 3, G3, who are really like, I just want to give the money. I want to be trust-based. I want it to have some type of social justice aspect of it. Or a lot of younger generations are really interested in impact first investing. So the negotiation is with, older generations who may already have their point of view. They created the wealth and are, transferring the wealth to these G2 and G3. But I work a lot with them on having a shared mission, shared values, shared purpose, so that we can kind of come together and have this plan and believe in it. You want to be able to know what you stand for and have some type of structure. It doesn't have to be so formal. It could be informal. But you want to make sure that everyone's voice is heard. And sometimes that's hard, right? Because they have different values. So I work on it a lot. And that's just because that's what I do. But would love to hear from you sort of maybe some questions or some things that we can think about to make it a little easier to talk about this through the different generations.
Sure. And just to also clarify, your G2 and G3 is like second and third generations. Is
Yes.
that sort of
Sorry,
okay?
we all have our own lingo, right, in our businesses. So
I just want to make sure we're all on the same page and I'm not making assumptions.
yes.
Okay, so great. This is a fantastic conversation piece because we're talking about how to find common interest among the different generations, right? And sometimes it's difficult if the different generations do have different values, right? And
Yep.
so I want to dig in a little bit more. So, for example, if you've got the older generation and they've got some wealth, generational wealth that they want to transfer down, I'm just trying to understand from your perspective. Is it that their adult children or maybe even adult grandchildren are having some say so in where their money is getting allocated? Like, what's the dynamics from the beginning?
Yeah, so it could be many things. Like I'm really working on the philanthropy piece, but they may have their wealth advisor who is talking about generational shifts in money and successor plans and what's going to happen in the future, what's their legacy, real it could be anything from like their real estate plan to their trust to all sorts of things. But in my world, I'm talking about philanthropy and there's still a lot that goes on there of thinking about, yes, just like you said, different values, different ways of thinking about money. Everyone has a different feeling about money or a different history with that. So it's really having to place like your personal issues with it, but also how you think about the entire family with that. And the different generations are very different, to say that easy.
Yes. And so I also have noticed, and one of the things that does make it different is that if you come up without a lot of money, but then eventually you make that money and then you decide as an adult, I don't want my kids to go through that struggle that I did. And so you try to provide more, your kids will have a very, very different relationship with money than you do. And so unfortunately, it's not like, oh, I'm providing something for them so that they don't have to struggle. You literally end up having very different value system because of that. So I want people to at least recognize before you even go into the part about negotiation, how these things sort of show up because your upbringing informs your values as well as your relationship with money, right?
Yes, of course.
So
Definitely.
that's really important. So then I would say like one of a really good, like I think when you're having these conversations with the different generations, if you, for example, Jaimi, are sitting down with a family and trying to have a conversation and trying to get them to like, you want everyone to at least be on the starting point, right? Like we need to get to an end point, but we need to start at the same place. And so I think that requires a bit of an activity, right? Where we actually ask everyone sort of what your values are, how do you want the world to be impacted? And the idea is to try to get to a common ground starting place.
Yes. So one of the things I always do, and I don't think many people do that, is I try and interview each member of the family separately and do a homework of a values exercise because I think that there's a way to find alignment. And you probably know this in your expertise. Like they may have different values, but there's some overarching way that you can do that. And it takes someone outside, I think, to be able to do that. So I totally agree. Like having an activity, having thinking about that and letting people have their own voice in that activity.
Yes. And also, if initially it seems like people's values are different, the best way to get to it is to continue to peel away those onion layers, because the deeper and deeper and deeper you go, eventually you should get to some kind of common ground. It's just that people have so many layers of everything and they're starting at a very high level and you want to go to a deep level, right? Because
Yes.
ultimately we all want safety. Ultimately, we all want connection. Ultimately, we probably all want, food that we can eat that's not poisoning our bodies, right? So the deeper you go, the higher the success level at finding common ground. And so that basically means you ask a lot of questions, which is probably what you're doing in these like solo sessions with everyone. And then if you're going to have like a family conversation with or without a facilitator, it is important for everyone to have a voice. And when I say that voice, I mean that it's not the kind of thing where I might say, well, this is my value, and you, Jaimi, immediately attack me or say, well, that's stupid, that's not, important. And it's more about just listening deeply to one another. And so let's just take an example of if there's a family trying to get to you, but they're trying to have a conversation maybe before getting to you, that they should have a structured conversation, even if it's without a facilitator, to say, let's all just listen to everyone and just have it be a listening activity. Everyone has a turn, set up a time frame. Everyone's got 5 minutes or 3 minutes, whatever it is, to express their viewpoint without anyone arguing with them or contradicting them, and just to be able to say what it is that they're saying. And even if someone can repeat back what it is that they heard, because a lot of times people have learned how to make the physical gestures that look like you're listening, where you're nodding your head, you're leaning in, doing all the things. But actually, when you ask them, hey, by the way, what was it that you like heard just now? If they're in their own minds and they've been thinking about something else, or they're thinking about, I can't wait till this meeting is over, you won't be able to articulate. And so then there actually isn't listening. So you want to make sure that people are listening by having them not paraphrase back what it is that they understood, right? So that's really important, because once they can do that, then you can be like, okay, people are at least understanding my point of view, regardless of whether they agree with my point of view, right? So that's step one. Then
I love that.
Then step two is to try to understand, okay, if we're starting here and we are not in alignment, we need to go deeper. So that's when they can ask each other questions to say, well, what about this? Is this important to you? What about that? Is that important to you? So, and just continue to ask more questions until you can get to a point of agreement to say, yes, I want to make sure that I'm safe. And can we all agree? We all want to be safe. And then from there, from that starting point, you can build a resolution that everyone has like in agreement, like they're all in agreement that this resolution works for everyone. You can't do it if you start from a place of disagreement, if that makes sense. Yeah. So talk a little bit more about like what happens for you when you are interviewing, like sort of what takeaways you have when you are interviewing people solo, and how you transition that into a group setting.
Well, I just want to say I love the repeat back. I haven't done that because I usually I'm doing individual interviews, but then we do come back together and have everyone share their values, but I haven't done the repeat back exercise. So I think I'll add that. So thank you for that wisdom. I think that really helps, like you said, just really be in the moment and actually be listening and ask those deeper questions. So I think you asked what happens during the interview. Repeat the question. Sorry, I lost my train of thought because I was listening so much to you that I lost my own train of thought.
Well, so I do want to just say, so when you do the repeat back, if it's a group setting, right, because there's multiple people, what you want to do is let everyone know, by the way, after someone speaks, I'm going to randomly pick someone to repeat back. So then because it's random, everyone has to listen, because no one knows when they will be chosen. So that's the trick, to be able to get everyone to listen, because you're letting them know you might get chosen, so you better be listening. Right. So that's a good way, because you don't have time to have all 5 people repeat back what they heard. So you just let them know, everyone listen, because I'm going to pick somebody randomly and you're going to let me know what it is that you understood. So that'll help engage everyone in the listening. Right.
Great. Yeah.
And then my question was, after you've spoken to everyone solo and you bring them back into a group setting, sort of how are you integrating the information that you got in the solo sessions when you're now in a group session?
Yeah, so a few ways. I think it's so funny because when I'm bringing back, so I do ask values questions, I ask purpose questions, I ask motivation questions, some history questions, and then interest areas, because that's the work that I do in philanthropy. But just thinking about the purpose and the vision and values, I think it's, you'll have people who have been married for 30 years and say, I didn't even know that. Like, I didn't know that you thought that, or I didn't know that was interesting to you. So I think I synthesize it and already come up with, I would love to know if this is the right way to do it or the best way to do it, but I synthesize it myself and already have an idea of where I'm going to say, here's where there is collaboration, here is where there's overlap. You may think your values are different because I let them define what the value is, the definition of the value is. So I give a list of words, but I don't give a definition because I want to hear what it actually means to them. And so when you really break it down, I think exactly what you said, people in general want safety, they want to be heard, they want to be in community. And so there is a way to overlap and align those. I mean, I'm not all rainbows and sunshine all the time, but like you really can find that. So I feel like it's my job to help find that and to do that and then bring it forward. And then they already have the sense of, oh, I guess I didn't think about it that way, or I didn't realize that actually, this value aligns with this value in different ways. And so that's usually how I do it, is bringing them together and having those conversations, but already have something set in place so that we can do that. But would love to hear your thoughts on if that's a good way to start.
I mean, I think so, right? Because sometimes it takes like an outsider to look at things objectively to say, okay, based on what I've heard, it sounds like there's agreement here, here, and here, right? Because everyone else has their biases against one another, for one another, whatever it is. And also biases where, like you mentioned, where someone says, oh, I didn't know you thought strongly about that. And so the bias there is that you have come to see someone in a certain way to the point that there's sections of them that you either never knew about because they never thought about vocalizing it, was never important enough to talk about. They never really thought about sharing it because it's just there, right? And it doesn't surface unless someone like you comes along and actually asks, hey, what's important to you, right? And so, I mean, just as a side note, it's really funny because I listen to classical music, but I just do it on my own. And very recently, my partner, we've been together for 13 years, and he said, I had no idea that you like classical music. Because I only listen to it when I'm by myself and I never really talk about it. Like, why do I need to talk about the music that I'm listening to? So in that same way, everyone it's not that it's a secret. It's just we are all so complex. There really isn't a way for everyone to know every single thing about their partner, no matter how long they've been together. And so I think synthesizing that as the outsider coming in, saying, okay, this is where all the commonalities lay, because then you, as the expert in philanthropy, probably have a list of organizations that would coincide with the values that they all have in common, right? Is that right?
A little bit. I mean, that's a little bit step ahead, but I always want to go back to what you say because I think it's really good. A lot of people aren't having these conversations because this is the first time, right? So maybe they see each other twice a year at a birthday or at a holiday. They're probably not sitting around having conversations about your values, right? They're talking about, what have you been doing since the last time I saw you? So you're exactly right. They're not digging deep. I don't know about you, but in my family, we're not doing that, right? So this is new to everyone, right? And this is a new conversation to have and to actually feel like comfortable that you can talk about this, right? But yes, my goal is, a few steps later is to really understand what's meaningful to them, where we can find overlap. And sometimes we can't exactly find overlaps in finding the right organization. So sometimes we'll do collaborative grant making as a unit together, but then each other person will have a bucket of funds because they really have a specific passion. And so if they have a specific passion, everyone should sort of honor that. But you can find some ground. And usually I find it through the interview of like, oh, these are the two areas that I think that they will all want to give together in.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So definitely, I think that the process that you're taking is a really great way to uncover the common interests. And so I think it's important if people are doing that pre-work without someone like Jaimi involved to actually start asking deeper questions about what's really important and what is the legacy that you want to leave behind. And not even just that, it's like, why is that legacy important to you? Right?
That's
because
a huge question.
yeah, because the legacy itself is not the deepest interest. There are many layers below that, and that points to your belief system and your value system as to like why you want to leave that legacy behind,
It's
right?
so true. I mean, you have conversations with people, um, especially the older generations who have lived a different life that even maybe the generation three didn't really know, right? They see their grandparents as wealthy individuals, but that's not how they grew up. That's not their story. They didn't ever maybe think that they're having a legacy, and now they're proud to be able to share it with their, you know, second and third generation. So yeah, I think it's being able to share those stories. Stories are such an important part of this whole process of philanthropy and estate and trust planning, and financial planning. All the wealth transfer, stories are important to that, so you can get to
Yes.
know the why, just like you said, the why.
Exactly, exactly. So these are, I think, like these deeper conversations are fascinating because, like you said, normally, even amongst family members, close family members, siblings, whatnot, we're not asking those deeper questions, like you said, because we're meeting up at like some birthday party, right? And catching up with like, how are the kids doing? That sort of thing. And so I think, even like if I were to pose a question of like, what do people think about the afterlife? What happens after you die? People aren't necessarily having those conversations with their loved ones necessarily, right? It
Right.
might be just a deep seated belief that each person has, and we just kind of don't talk about it because people aren't comfortable talking about that, or it's not societally like acceptable to be talking about death, right? People are kind of like,
Yes.
we don't want to talk about that, right? And so I think that that is really an important thing to bring up because when you are talking about philanthropy, you are talking about long term. You want to leave a legacy that is beyond your own life, right? And so I think it is important to talk about those things because that ties in directly with like, how do you want your legacy to continue on long after you have left the planet?
Yeah, I think, well, that's where there can also be some issues because the third generation may say, I don't want this money to last that long. I want to give it. Like the world is on fire. I want to give it. And, the generation who created the money may say, well, this is, I worked 50 years to get here, right? Or I've been, boots on the ground building this business or whatever it may be. So there is that tension there because, and legacy doesn't have to mean that your money just stays forever, right? It could just be that you're doing something together, you find some value in it, and that the legacy can be with the third generation if you're sharing those values and you're having those conversations and sharing some purpose. So, maybe they give out more than the other generations would, the new generations, but they're still doing it, I think, in honor of their family. If when you get to that point, you got to get there though.
Right, right. And then the other thing too is let's say that you're blocked between like G3 and G1, and G1 is like, hey, I want to make sure that G3 has like enough money because I, you know, created this amount of wealth and I want to make sure I transfer to you and that you keep it so that you have a good life. And that generation says, no, I just want to spend it and give it away, right? So I think there's definitely more layers to uncover in that thing because that comes into conflict resolution, right? Conflict resolution is all about, okay, we're taking two different viewpoints and we need to somehow get to a place of agreement. And so a lot of times I will use reframing and really just asking deeper questions. So those two things can help you help your clients if they're stuck at a place where you feel like, okay, great, I feel like they're not even in the same place. I would argue that we just haven't gone deeper yet. It's not deep enough yet to determine like what that is, because sometimes it might be a matter of just asking the first generation, why is it important to you for them to have this money for the rest of their lives?
Right.
Right? Because clearly it's important and to try to understand why it's important. And they might say something like, because I worked hard and I don't want them to have to worry like I worried, right? Like we want to get to that why of why it's important for generation three. Then you ask the third generation, like, why is it more important for you to spend it, to donate it, to do whatever you want with it versus having it be there? And they will give a deeper answer. And so then once they all understand each other a little bit more about the reasons why, then it starts to shift a little bit because now they're having a deeper understanding of the why. And so I think that if we just stop at, oh, well, my value is spending it all now because the earth is on fire. If we stop there, we're not going to get to the resolution. So we have to start asking deeper questions like, okay, what's important? And then I would even continue to ask, okay, so generation 3, if you go ahead and donate all of that money, and let's say by the time you're 40, you've run out of this generational wealth, like what are you going to do? What are your plans? And would you be okay with the fact that you're now going to have to work because the money that was gifted to you has all been donated to these other organizations? And have them think about it. And one of two things will happen. They will now think about it and realize, oh, actually, you're probably right. I don't really want that to happen. Or they might say, I'm fine to start working hard. I don't care about like living in comfort. I've lived in comfort my whole life, and I'm okay to experience like the struggle. And that's okay too. We can't like try to shield everyone because we didn't like a part of our lives and try to shield everyone later coming after us. If the other generation says, I haven't experienced it, you haven't allowed me to experience it because I've always had everything I want, and I'm okay when I turn 40 to have to struggle and figure it out, that's okay. Right?
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing. I'm always learning. I think we're all learning. And so I love the reframing and, really thinking about that. You're right. That it's okay. It's what they want, what they feel is right for them now and at this moment, so.
And I think what happens in these conversations is that they're assumptions, right? The older generation is assuming, hey,
Right.
you probably don't want to struggle. And the younger generation is making their own assumptions. So you want to just continue to dig deeper and deeper to find out what is behind those assumptions and to debunk some of those assumptions. Because if someone says, hey, if I say to my kids, I want you to not struggle, I want you to be able to retire, I want you to just not worry, and they say, we don't really care about that, why am I doing what I'm doing? Or why am I fighting against it, right?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Alice, do you have points of how to negotiate through those, assumptions people may have? Is there a specific question you ask or a way you do that?
Yeah, so it's just like, so you, Jaimi, as you're talking to them, you kind of almost have to see the assumption, which is, okay, the assumption is the older generation is not wanting the younger generation to struggle. And that's why you start to ask questions such as, well, would you be okay if you ended up having to struggle? And if you're not okay, like, that sort of thing, because they might say, yeah, you're right, I'm not okay. So what I want you to do as the person who's helping to facilitate the conversation is to try to hear what are those invisible assumptions. Like you as the outsider can probably notice, oh, they're probably assuming that they want them to be able to retire. So then you ask the question, do you want to be able to retire? Is that important? Is it important for you to have this money so that you can retire and not worry about retirement? They might say, no, that's not a value of mine. Okay, so just try to hear what those assumptions are based on what they're asking for, right? On both sides. And then the way to debunk it is to go deeper into those assumptions.
Right. Okay. I love
Right?
that. Yeah.
Ask more about it. Don't ever ignore it. Don't just be like,
Right.
okay, well, clearly, I don't know why, but they don't want to retire. Well, maybe they never thought about it. Maybe no one has ever
Right.
asked them to imagine if they're 45 years old and they're really tired and they don't want to work anymore. And how would you feel if you feel like you got to work for the next 30 years because you saved none of your inheritance, right?
Yeah.
Would that be
Yeah.
okay? And they might say, you know what? I want to go out and make my own money. I don't want someone else's money. That is also a legitimate answer.
Right. No, I really appreciate the way that you are giving ideas of how to do that, because I think a lot of times maybe facilitators think, oh, I'll help fix it, or we'll kind of say, well, this is what they think, and so how can we make this together? But I love asking that, just directly asking the question, because a lot of times they don't want to, right? Or it's uncomfortable, and so being neutral, I can ask those questions and have an let the open conversation flow.
Yes. Yes, definitely. Just dig into their belief systems more and more and be direct. Like, okay, so you're saying you want to donate all the money now. Are you okay if you like have to save up for your own retirement? And they might say, I would rather save for my own retirement. I don't want to rely on inheritance. Like, that's a possibility, right? And
Right.
if that comes to light, that shifts the entire conversation.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
So I
Yeah.
think like once you do that, you'll recognize like, oh, I'm getting to a resolution here because now
Yeah.
we're understanding where people are coming from. Whereas before they're arguing their positions.
Right.
When you
Right.
get to the
Yeah.
deep understanding of them, they might say, you know what? It's great that you've got this money. And it's great you saved it up your whole life. It's great that you have this dream that you don't want me to struggle, but I don't want that for myself.
Right.
Right. And I want to take your legacy and be able to share it with everyone else. And then I want to build my own legacy.
Yes.
And I think that's an important like distinction to recognize in a group setting when people are like not on the same page.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think exactly like you said, a lot of people feel that way, but expressing it sometimes can be hard. And so asking the right questions or asking the questions to each other is a great way to uncover that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, Jaimi, if people wanted to work with you or they want to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah. So I try and be on LinkedIn. I need to be better at that, but you can find me there. See the spelling of my name. It's, it was the 70s, so they wanted to spell it differently. And then my website is www.cor, C-O-R, with no E, philanthropy.com. And I'd love for you to go on and see why I named it COR. There's a little story there.
Awesome. Wonderful. I'll definitely check it out. And
Yeah.
listeners, definitely check out Jaimi's website as well. Jaimi, this was such a pleasant conversation. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yes, thank you. I'm always learning new things. I took notes over here, so I'm going to use them going forward with the families that I have the privilege to work with. So thank you.
I would love for you to come and tell me how it goes once you implemented some of those new techniques and strategies.
Yes, definitely. Will do.
Thank you. And listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Negotiation with Alice. Until next time.